My guest is Arik Roper, who is here to discuss his new book of mushroom art called Mushroom Magic, which is a beautiful presentation of watercolor paintings of psychoactive mushrooms. And we're also going to play music. In an entire year of doing this show, I have never once played background music. The background music for the show is by Shen Flindell, and you can find out more about him at ethnosuperlounge.com. Thanks for listening. Arik, welcome to Gnostic Media Research and Publishing's podcast number 47. How are you doing today?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Would you like to, you're welcome, and would you like to tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, I am a freelance illustrator and graphic designer from New York. I do a lot of illustration for various clients and outlets. I do work for a lot of bands and music industry things. I also do graphics for t-shirts, posters, concert posters, silkscreen design, as well as some fine art painting things. And I attended the School of Visual Arts in New York City from 1991 to 95. I specialized in cartooning and illustration, as well as silk screening. So,
are you the one that puts all the amanitas in our cartoons?
Yes. Even retroactively, I was responsible for that.
You've got a lot of beautiful artwork images in here, and, some of them are fairly accurate, but, and for any critics of the book that say it's not an accurate field guide, it does have a disclaimer, actually, in the book explicitly stating right off that it's not meant as an accurate field guide, and don't try and go pick mushrooms in the field with it. But at the same time, many of them are very accurate. But which is why I wanted to have you on the show. It's an artistic representation, and I focus the show very much all the time on the academic, scientific perspective, and it's time to get the artistic expression out there as well, because, as everybody knows who's experienced any of the psychedelics or entheogens, that it certainly has a dramatic impact on our artistic abilities and talents and the way we think about art and everything. So it's important to discuss art.
Oh yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think in some ways it might be the original message of these things. Before language comes these images, and if these sorts of plants are what's been influencing religion and language for all these years, then I think it goes without saying that the visions are what probably led to a lot of this early, especially religious art.
Right. Oh, and religious stories and texts as well. Somebody's tripping and they're trying to tell these fantastic stories of these visions that they're having, and that becomes either the iconographic art or the written mythological art.
Yeah.
In the form of later what became the dogmatic religions, in other words.
Sure. Yeah, I think the core essence of a lot of these ecstatic experiences are these visions, and the proof is in there, for anybody who's got the time to investigate with some of these things by looking into them, checking them out, or partaking of them. Then you can see that there's a well of imagery that's out there, I feel, that kind of exists, and you can tap into it. And some of these different things, these different mushrooms and other plants, they have different flavors to them. Like there's a think there's a reason that fairies and this sort of medieval fantasy stuff is connected with the Amanita, and there's distinct imagery that is kind of associated with a lot of these things. And I don't think it's just the association that we have with them now. I think there's something to do with the alkaloids within that sort of somehow, interact with the mind and create these things. I think that's where it started, as opposed to the other way around.
Well, one of the things that I find fascinating, a lot of people will argue that Amanitas cannot be such an important religious tool because of the difficulty in attaining a major religious experience with them. And, I've had Wolfgang Bauer on my show who, and I've talked about this in the past and talked about it in my book, Astrotheology and Shamanism as well, is that it's really something that these are tools, and not all tools are created equal. Some tools are more difficult to use than others. That, if you pick up a screwdriver and can use a screwdriver, that doesn't mean that a chainsaw is just as easy to use, and or driving a car for that matter. You have to learn how to use the tool that you're working with, and so one of the things, and where I was leading at, is one of the things that I find very interesting is how common the Amanita muscaria of all mushrooms is in the folklore and the mythology and the tales and the religious artwork and things like that. I mean, it is literally found everywhere, especially in Europe. And so what do you think about that? What do you think about this role of these things and their connection to the artwork and the difficulty of Amanita, for that matter, but its role in the iconography?
Well, it's definitely quite a interesting looking character. It's one of the most outstanding things you're going to find probably in the forest if you're walking around looking. I could see why they came to be noticed, and I could see why they would be painted even if a person has no idea about the psychoactive properties of it. It's a really pleasing looking mushroom. It's colorful, it's vibrant, it looks like something that came from somewhere else, and,
right.
Yeah, so I can see why it's such an icon. And as far as the usage and the reliability of the experience and so forth, like what you just said about the tool metaphor, it's sometimes the hardest tools to use are also the most effective, and I don't see how that disqualifies it from being a candidate for a tool for religious experience.
Just because somebody used it once or twice and didn't understand how to use the tool doesn't mean that the tool doesn't work.
Oh yeah, surely. Obviously, we're talking a long time here. People have had a long time to figure these things out.
Well, yeah, and I think not only that, but they pass the information down generation after generation. And I think in Terence McKenna's book, Food of the Gods, he sort of tries to denounce Amanita as effective, and you'll read a lot of these reports on the internet that that it's not effective, and and it's just I really not only that, but there's as we point out in Astrotheology and Shamanism, it wasn't just about taking one substance. A lot of these people used many different substances, and they would combine them, like the strong wine. But I also think that amanitas and psilocybes were mixed together in many of the mysteries, and that is part of the secret that very few people talk about.
Yeah, that seems likely.